Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
How are you this evening?
Great, I'm curious.
Good. As I tell the kids, good is good. Good is good. First of all, I just want to applaud you for simply being here. You know, because you didn't have to be here now. You could be doing anything else. But you made a choice, a conscious choice to be here. And in so doing, you really said, you know, whenever we say yes to one thing, we say no to something else. So you said no to any number of things that you could be doing this evening. And in so doing, you really sent a powerful message to your kids. You know, because it's really easy to say, you know, I'm concerned, I'm worried, and stuff like that. And I have no doubt that you genuinely feel that. You know, but it's another thing that when we demonstrate it in action, you know, to the point where you suspend anything that you put aside and you make the trip out here. So I really applaud you for being here this evening. I genuinely do. And it's important that you're here. You know, there's a website, I forget the name of the website, it has to do with drug prevention and information that it could give to parents and things like that. And the slogan for that website is Parents, the Anti-Drug, which I find to be a fascinating slogan. And it speaks to how important you are in the decision making and sense of expectation that your children have. That they really seek to meet your expectations in what you say has tremendous currency and import. Though they may look at you dismissively and may they look at you like, what? You know, and they might be, I wish I had another set of parents, and all of this, right? You know, but deep down inside where it really matters, they really hear it, and it really does matter to them. You know, I remember I was talking to this one kid, and it was so funny. He was and this was in grade school, and I'm originally from New York City, and I was doing some work up in New York City, and I had this one kid, and he was saying, and this one kid's parents allowed him to do whatever he wanted. And you would think that this one kid would love the fact that his parents let him do whatever he wanted. And you know what he says? He says, you know, so-and-so's mother really loves him a lot. And I said, what do you mean by that? How do you know that? And he says, she's always behind him and she doesn't let him get away with hardly anything. I find that really interesting, you know? And that was the way he gauged love. He says, wow, his mother is like always on top of him and stuff. She must really love him a lot. And it was really interesting as opposed to like, wow, you know, my mom is like, she lets me do anything, you know. So the bottom line is though they may say what they say, it really does matter, you know. And they really do need you tremendously. You know, I don't know about you. I'm sure I don't need to tell you that. You know, and while I certainly do know stuff about this drugs and alcoholism and stuff like that, because myself, just like my colleague last week, Rodney, you know, we're both recovered drug addicts and alcoholics, and I was a drug addict and alcoholic actively for a good number of years, 23 years to be exact, you know, and it's been in April it'll be 26 years of me not picking up a drug or a drink, and so I've really had the rather unique opportunity of seeing what life is like in the midst of it, and what life is like in recovery. And I tell kids all the time, you know, without doubt, you know, the most pleasurable years of my life have been the past 26. You know, and probably one of the most heartbreaking and heart-wrenching things that happened to me in those 23 years was not that I got hurt, not that I ended up going to jail, not that I ended up losing an academic scholarship to high school, and losing the offer of an athletic scholarship to college, both of which, you know, I had, you know, in my grip. What was the most painful thing is that I hurt my mom. And I tell kids that all the time, and they get that. They really get that. You know, when I tell them I hurt my mom, they almost have that look on their face like, really? You know, and you know, the bottom line is I don't say that for dramatic purposes, because I tell kids all the time, I'm not here to, you know, dramatize or exploit or make, you know, I'm not into all that nonsense. No, I'm not there to, you know, talk in terms of fear. I just tell them the truth, and the fact of the matter, that was the worst thing that happened, the fact that I hurt my mom the way I did. Kids understand that, you know, so you're very, very important. So I'm really glad you're here tonight. And, you know, the bottom line is that though I may know as much as I know, and though I may have had the experiences that I've had, you know, I only serve as a backup to you. I really do. Myself, Straub, it's what we do. We really are your backup. You're really at the forefront. And all we do as best we can is support you in your efforts. Because when all is said is done, you're the one that really, really matters. And don't ever shortchange how important the role it is that you play. You know, it's a tremendously important role, you know, and kids seek out, you know, your information and your direction, you know, and the boundaries that you set for them because they so desperately need it. So what I like to do is I'm going to conduct this much like I conduct my classes. I tell kids all the time, there's a body of information that I think is important for you to know, and I'll share that with you. But equally as important as what I want to share with you is what you want to know from me. So I'm going to, as best I can, kind of run this down the middle, where I'll share with you what I've talked about with kids in class. I like to make reference to some information Ms. Straub gave me here regarding, you know, some things that some maybe parents of freshman students and parents of sophomore students may be interested in. But I think there's some interesting points I'd like to just speak to these. And then I'd like to open it up for you to ask me whatever questions you may have regarding, you know, your kids being in school right now. Especially ninth grade, because this is a really, 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 you know, it's kind of like a sensitive year for a ninth grader, you know. Because whenever kids are going through transitions, that's a difficult time for them. At any point where they have to go transition, move to another state, move to another area, come to another school, these kind of situations can cause discomfort, and they really need to be watched and guided, especially at a time of transition. When they move one situation where they know everything, and they come to a situation where they really know very little. And one of the most troubling things about when they do that is they operate, for the most part, on perception. Because they really don't know what really is genuinely going on in Severn High School. They have all these ideas of what's going on. And that's, you know, and that's fertile ground for them to absorb and pick up totally erroneous information and run with it. And the problem with that is that in their desire to want to fit in, they may fit in with what they think is the cool thing to do. And in almost every instance, they're wrong, especially when it comes to drug and alcohol. They are so wrong. Right? So basically, a little bit about FCD. FCD has been around for about 30 plus years now. You know, we work literally around the world. You know, about 25% of the schools that we services are international schools. We work throughout Europe. And I always like to make that point only because there's some folks who believe that the fact that in Europe kids get to drink beer at 16 and hot liquor at 18, that those kids know how to drink and they handle it well. They don't. And they don't for a very simple reason. We come from a health perspective. FCD's position is that we really talk a lot about brain development. You know, and the bottom line is I don't care where you live. You could live in Severn, you could live in Seville, you could live in Savannah, you could live in Somalia. I don't care where you live. If you're 15 years old, your brain is in the same spot, which is a very strange spot. You know, so it's subject to the same kind of nuttiness, no matter where you are. So I don't care if you're Italian, French, or English, or German, it doesn't matter. You're going to drink and you're going to have problems with it because your brain, given at the point at which your brain, it's the stage of development it is, it cannot handle a substance as powerful as alcohol. And I keep trying to drive that home to kids. This stuff is nothing to play with. This alcohol is nothing to play with. You know, and they really don't fully understand how problematic something like alcohol is, especially as a young person. They really genuinely don't get it. You know, so again, FCD works all around the world doing what we do, and we come from a health perspective, as I said, and basically the structure of our program, as I've done with this with the ninth graders here, is we talk about some things that put kids at risk So I was talking to them about family history. It's important for them to know their family history. It's important to know if their grandparents and things like that are alcoholics, because it puts them at risk if they ever choose to drink. And I always tell kids, if you ever choose to drink, I never say when you drink or when you get around to drinking, even as an adult, because I tell them all the time, drinking is a ridiculously optional thing not done by large numbers of people, both adults and high schoolers. There's a lot of people who don't drink and choose not to, really do. And they really think, there was, I have this program, I don't know if you kids talk about this clicker program I did with them, where they have to answer things according to the clicker. And one of the questions is, what percentage of adults do not drink? They invariably score adults as drinking in excess, 80%. They would go as high as 90% if that was an optional, it's a multiple choice if that was an option. But they would almost always have you up there at 80. And I said, what makes you think that? Why makes you think there's so many adults drinking? And they said, because that's all we see. For some reason they have this notion that all adults are drinking. I said, that's not true. Almost half adults don't drink at all. The actual number is, the actual number is 60%. They figure it, they gauge it at 60%. But they have adults drinking at 80%, and the kids would score 90% if that was a question option. So I talk about, whenever I talk to children about drinking, I always say, if you choose to, if you ever choose to. And some kids don't ever. And that's one of the worst things, parents could do. And sometimes parents will say to kids, when you drink, and then they go on to say what to do when you drink. And that's really not a safe thing to say, because that sets up an expectation of drinking. And the worst thing you can do is say something like, when you drink. Because you might be talking to a child who has no interest in drinking, who's not even thinking about drinking, who doesn't see drinking in their future at all, really. And then to say when you drink is like, well, I guess I got it wrong. I guess I'll be drinking. So you want to stay away from that. So what we do is we talk about some risk factors. I talk about age of first use. That's why 9th grade is so important. I talk about some of the reasons why kids drink. And we each of our classes, we've made a list. And it's really interesting because some of the things that I have here are some of the reasons that they say they drink. And one of the things I see here, it says, one of the points that Sam was talking about was stress. And when we made that list of reasons why kids drink, one of the things that they came up with was, when I asked them, I said, why do you think kids drink? And one of the things they came up with is stress. And I said, yeah, that's absolutely right. Stress, wanting to feel better, wanting to fit in, wanting to be cool, wanting to just feel comfortable, for confidence and for courage, being able to go to the party and have a good time and things like that. And I say to them, I say, all those reasons that a young person would want to drink or use drugs, when you look at these reasons, they all make sense. You wouldn't fault anybody for wanting that. You wouldn't fault anyone for wanting to feel better. You wouldn't fault anybody for wanting to get rid of stress, to just have some fun, to just have the kind of confidence to talk to this girl or talk to this guy or go to the party and get out on the floor and whip it up with everybody else. I mean, who would fault anybody for that? There may be even some adults who may even desire that for themselves. And I tell kids, there's nothing wrong with wanting that. The problem is, how do I get that? That's the issue. Wanting is not the problem. And if I find that drinking allows me to get that, I'm immediately in trouble. Because I'm going to want all those things on a regular basis. I want to relieve my stress. I want to feel better all the time. I want to have fun all the time. I want to feel confident enough to say something all the time. And if I find that the only way I can do that is using alcohol, I've already made it possible for me to become dependent on alcohol. And that's what happened to me. I tell kids all the time, I was an alcoholic and still am an alcoholic who've never enjoyed the taste of alcohol. I tell kids all the time, there's no young person I know who drinks alcohol for taste. I've never seen a young person have himself a beer and say, wow, boy, this is a refreshing can of beer. I love the barley and hops in this. I don't know if there's any young person who knows what a barley or hop is. I've never really concerned myself with a bottle in house. All I know is that when I drink this, it made me feel better. And that's the only thing that concerns me. When I drink this, it makes me feel better. Allows me to do certain things. And I tell kids all the time, what that allows you to do is perfectly okay. That thing about feeling comfortable and wanting to do this, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when you found that this is the way to get there, I'm already in trouble. I'm already in trouble. So we talk about the things that puts them at risk. We talk about media and its impact. Kids are real clear about media and its impact. I like to dissect the beer commercial. We take a look at the beer commercial and the influences of beer commercials and the messages that go out in the beer commercial, which are really dangerous, really dangerous. And how they place women in beer commercials, and how they use women in beer commercials, and hard liquor commercials, and the difference between a hard liquor commercial and a beer commercial. You know, and I tell them all the time. They say, you know, they see it. You know, they can see it. They say, you know, hard liquor commercials, people look a little more adultish-like, and in beer commercials, they look like red. I tell kids in a beer commercial, if they did a beer commercial with the kids in the school, they wouldn't even have to dress them. They would say, just dress the way you are, you're suited perfectly for a beer commercial. You know, and it's not surprising that a beer commercial is structured that way. You know, and I tell them, you know, in the beer commercial, when you look at it, everything in that beer commercial is designed. Everything in that beer commercial, the way it's structured, it's in such a way that everything in that commercial is something you like to have. You like to have that cute girl. You like to be having fun. You like to be with your friends. You like to be having a party. You like to have everything. You know, and then what you don't, you know, I tell them all the time, I said in the beer commercial, everybody has beer in their hand. Beer's all over the place and nobody's drunk. I said, do you really think that when you go to a party, everybody having something to drink, nobody gets drunk, nobody throws up, nobody possibly passes out or has a hard time or starts arguing or having a fight or being belligerent? So anyway, we like to talk about media. So once we cover all those things, next thing I like to do is I like to talk about alcohol, tobacco, and marijuana, which are the most. If one of the questions you were even thinking of asking me is like, what's a drug that we need to be aware of? Alcohol and marijuana. You really need to know, especially marijuana. I drive home marijuana really strong with kids, you know, because they genuinely think it's not a problem. They really think it's no problem. Again, with that clicker program, one of the questions I put was, is marijuana harmful? And they had the option of, yes, it's harmful. No, it's not harmful. Yes, it's harmful, but it's just a minor. In the majority of the answers, and this is ninth grade majority of the answers, no, it's not harmful. Yes, it's harmful, but just minor. The minority answer, yes, it's harmful. That's because the majority of kids see marijuana as really genuinely not that big a deal. And I tell kids all the time, the most dangerous drug for you is the drug that you think is not that dangerous. And which are those? Alcohol and marijuana. I tell kids all the time, you know, I ask them, which are the most dangerous drugs? They come up with cocaine, methamphetamine, crack, all these exotic, out there drugs. I say most kids don't even use them. How many kids in high school around here running around with cocaine? How many out here using heroin? None. You may never hear about that. Maybe every 10, 15 years, there may be an incident in this school or any school where all of a sudden there's some kids who are using heroin or cocaine. That hardly ever happens. But how regularly do you hear about marijuana and alcohol? All the time. And when you think about whether you want to use a drug or anything like that, when you're playing around with that idea, you're not thinking cocaine and methamphetamine. You're thinking either alcohol or marijuana. And these kids pick, children who choose to use drugs will use that drug that they think the risk factor is very low. Because whenever the kids see risk factor is low, use goes up. You can just expect it. You know, when the risk factor, they see risk factors low, use goes up. So we talk about that, and I tell them, you know, I make really clear, you know, the problems with marijuana and how it could really affect their education right now. Yeah.
Has anyone asked about because it's come up in my house about the legalization of marijuana out west and how horrible that is and how it might filter down?
When we talked about it, in fact, it was interesting. One of the questions I had on, when we held Lincoln there was, if you could, would you vote to legalize marijuana? And I have 7 classes. I've done this quick thing with 6 classes. 4 to 6 classes would have voted for the passage of marijuana. We haven't had, our last class is a class where we'll have the opportunity to discuss some of the answers that came up on the clicker. A lot of them would have voted for the passage of marijuana. And I tell kids all the time, I said, the reason that, you choose something like that is because you probably don't really know what you're really voting for. You probably really don't know. And that's really an absence, so that's something that we are going to talk about.
Yeah, just because it's taking the medicine, it's good for
Yeah.
I mean, the kids are smart, they're reading stuff.
Well, one class, I wrapped up one class today, and so we did get to talk about marijuana in that way, and when it was interesting because one student said to me, he was kind of arguing to a certain degree, respectfully, in a real good way, and he was like, well, it's just not that big a deal, and I was telling him, I said, the fact that it interferes with your memory process, the fact that it interferes with your ability to absorb new information, the overall effectiveness of your brain, the fact that it has this amotivation syndrome, the fact that it's addictive. If nothing else, that'd be bad enough right there. And I said, and what I did is, I said, there's a number of things I can list about the harmful effects of marijuana, but I really wanted to focus on those things because they're really academically oriented. I like to focus on those particular things, the harmful effects of marijuana, specific to their education. So I talk about memory, the ability to learn new information, the overall effectiveness of the brain is impaired under the influence of marijuana. And the more you use it, the more destructive it is on the brain. And then I was showing them, one of the questions on that click thing was, for a young person who begins to use marijuana as a teenager, what's the rate of addiction? And they had a bunch of choices. And, they were able to see that it's 1 in 6. It's the highest rate the younger you are. As a grown-up, that's 1 in 25. That's a 4% for an adult. For a teenager, it's 17%. Again, why is that? Because of the brain. I tell them all the time, this thing with the brain is so important. This issue with the brain. I said, a lot of times you don't think about it. What happens when you use drugs and how it affects the brain is a critical thing. So we talk about that, and then one of the last things that I will be doing tomorrow, I pretty much wrap up with all of the 9th graders, is there's a list of some really good questions that they have, and I just want to address all of those things that they wrote. And they have some really good questions that I couldn't put into the clicker program. But a lot of things, whether you still want to know about how it affects them, what does it do to them? And I think it's important for myself, or you, school, to give them that information. Because when they get it out in the street, they always get the A side. I remember when I was coming up, we used to have the 45 records of vinyl. Go back into the dinosaur years and stuff. And like, you never wanted to hear the B side. You always wanted to hear the A side. So my conversation with kids, I focus on the B side. I also focus on the B side of my story, because they don't need to hear about like the good days and how much fun I had. I don't even use the word party. So I really think that's the incorrect use of a party. A party is I go to a place where you have fun, you're safe, and you're having a good time. I don't think there's anything party-like from under the influence of drugs or drunk. Personally, I really don't see that as party. I choose not to use that terminology. But what I try to do is focus on the, some parents are concerned about, in some cases, some parents are concerned about me talking to kids about drugs and alcohol, because kids will look at me and say, wow, he can't be that bad. He looks like he's all right. But I've never had a kid say to me afterwards that they would like to be like me. Never. In fact, they're happy I stopped drinking. Most of them, when they take a look at my story, because I really emphasize on how bad it was. And that's not hard to do because it was pretty wretched. I talk about how bad it was. So essentially, that's what we talked about this week. I'd just like to make note of some things. You know, there was a survey that the school did a couple of years ago, and there was some really, really good information. And one of the things that came out of that I thought was very interesting, parents will often ask me, you know, where do the kids get this stuff, you know? And one of the answers that came out when the survey is done, students are the ones who, you know, respond to the survey. In this particular school, it was the 8th grade all the way to the, I think the 11th or 12th grade. And, the information that the school got back was that 79% of the kids get their, you know, end up drinking at their friend's house. You know, so they're leaving your place and going to a friend's house. You know, so unfortunately, we have some parents out there who are really irresponsible like that. And what you need to know in that regard is you need to know the parents of the friends of your child's best friends. You know, and you need to know, and you don't need to be buddy and buddy with them, but you want to know kind of know, like, well, what is their thinking regarding this stuff? You know, it's real important. You know, the other thing that I found really interesting, you know, with this clicker program, I get to, you know, a lot of the information that, you know, that I get back is pretty, you know, I can feel really comfortable with the information we get back on that, because it's totally anonymous, so the kids feel comfortable responding. And one of the questions that I have on that is, have you ever taken alcohol out of your house without permission? And this is just for the 9th graders. And consistently, there are a small percentage, not a lot, I don't want you to get too nervous, small percentage. And your answer is never, once, or more than once. And I always, in every one of my classes, I had a kid who said at least once or more than once. So, while we don't have a big problem with 9th grade, I don't want you to get too freaked out behind it. But the fact of the matter is that you have some of the kids who are taking it out of the house without permission. You know, and so when you wonder about where these kids are getting what they get, you know, before you start looking way outside, you got to look home. You also want to see, where are they going to hang out? At some other kid's house, at some other kid's friend's house. Because, you know, as you know, they have that summertime thing, that beach week or whatever it's called. You know, so clearly there's some parents that have some real liberal attitudes about drinking and things like that. You know, and that kind of liberal attitude may not be just reserved until senior year. That liberal attitude may be taking place throughout the 4 years. And you need to know about that. You really do. You need to stay informed. You know, get in their business. That's your business. Whatever they really don't have any business. You know, like they're running around, that's my own business. No, your business is my business. You know, you need to be on that. So, and then the last thing we talk about is how to help a friend, and we did that as a whole class the other day. You know, and the bottom line is that, you know, they all of them are presently either have or presently are either have or presently are dealing with a relationship, friend of the family, or a friend of their own, whose, you know, use of a substance, be it anywhere from cigarettes to prescription drugs, they're having difficulty with it, you know. So, you know, that's a painful thing for the kids. But it's not surprising. That's not unusual. You know, whenever I go to any school, I always get at least half, if not more, of any given class who will always raise their hand and say, yeah, I know somebody who's drinking or using drugs and stuff. Of course, it's concerned. It really is true. You know. Last thing I want to say that's important is that some parents, you know, one of the notes I saw here is that there are some kids, some freshman kids who are talking about the use of drugs, alcohol amongst freshmen, you know. And let me just share this with you. Kids tend to overestimate use. We have found that time and time again. You know, you may hear things like everybody all the time. There's so many kids. You may hear these exaggerated terms. And that there are kids in 9th grade who are drinking or maybe using, maybe smoking some marijuana, maybe a little bit there. I don't doubt. What I do doubt is that it's happening on a large scale, or that it's happening in a really problematic way, you know. So one of the things I'd just like to just share with you is that, sometimes the kids might come home and they may say something about exaggerated use. And, the bottom line is that kids take a little bit of information and they blow it up and make it worse than what it is. It happens time and time again, It's this thing that we call a social norms theory. And the social norm theory basically goes like this. It says that there are certain social norms that are true. Social norm. A social norm will be that there are some ninth graders who are drinking, let's say. That would be a social norm. It's not unusual. I don't think that you'd be shocked to hear that there are some ninth graders who are drinking. The normative belief is what the normative belief is. The normative belief is my perception of that social norm. And that normative belief tends to be an exaggerated or totally misplaced understanding of that social norm. So on a social norm is ninth graders drink. We accept that. We don't like it, we accept that. The normative belief would be something like all the kids in the ninth grade, most of the kids in the ninth grade, kids in the ninth grade drink all the time, One of the questions that I asked one of the kids in the clicker program was, yes or no, most high school students drink occasionally. All of them, majority of the time, their response is yes. I said, where do you get that from? What makes you think that high school kids are drinking occasionally, just on a regular basis, that most of them are? Again, they get a little bit of information in, a little bit of information in, and they blow it totally out of proportion. Is there a core group who drink on a regular basis, or in some cases drink a lot? Yeah, and that's to be found at all schools, But unfortunately, we don't hear about the kids who don't drink. We don't hear about the kids who are doing the right thing, which is, I think, is an absolute shame. TV's not interested in talking about them. We had a laugh the other day in class. I said, when was the last time you saw a reality show based on appropriately behaving kids? They just flat out laughed behind that one. It was like, get out of here. They said, that would never make it to TV. I said, yeah, it wouldn't. It wouldn't. It probably would make it to the first commercial, and then the screen would go blank, right? And it said, this show has been canceled due to lack of interest, right? Because it wouldn't make it. And that's really a shame. It's really a shame. And I said to them the other day, I said, how does TV portray kids who don't drink? And it was interesting the terms they came up with. Nerdy, goody two shoes, socially inept. How about that? I mean, how rotten is that? Just because I don't drink, I'm like some socially, misfit. I said, and, I'm glad that when they said it with, with a sense of how incorrect that is. I said, you're absolutely right, that really is incorrect. And it's really unfortunate that they portray kids that way. Because and I know kids who don't drink and don't use drugs, who are really cool, they have fun, they do all kinds of stuff. So in order for me to be cool, it doesn't require that I have to, drink or use any kind of substance. So basically, that's what I'm doing with the kids this week. What I'd like to do is, one last thing, remember that thing with stress, I just want to say this one thing before we move on, and hopefully I'll be able to answer all the questions. And that is, one of the questions is, how do I help my child deal with stress? One of the questions that Sam shared, the thing we were talking about as possible, area to discuss. And FCD does not say that you should not drink. If you choose to drink, what you want to do is you want to model the proper way to drink, so that when your child is of age to drink, they know how to handle it appropriately. And that comes with stress, because one of the worst things we could do is that the best way to show a child how to deal with stress is to model how you deal with stress. And the worst way that you can model how to deal with stress is when you come home and say, I've had a real rough day, I just need to have a drink, and I'll be with you in a minute. You know, I'm really having some difficulty here today. I just want to have a drink. I want to relax, and I'll be right with you. That's a wrong message, you know, because that's what they pick up. Because, you know, instead of saying something like, I need to call my girlfriend, I want to call my college buddy, I need to talk to your dad, I'm going to talk to your mom, and we just need to discuss some stuff, and I'll be with you in a minute. Or I'm just going to take a really nice bath. I need to sit in my room quietly for a few minutes. I'm really having a rough day today, and I'll be with you. Send that message out, you know, and demonstrate that, because it's my belief that kids use drugs because they want to achieve a certain effect, and that effect falls under the category of a social skill or a coping skill. And they lack the coping skill or the social skill. And dealing with stress is a coping skill. And, you know, and sometimes they don't know how to handle it. And this is a very important time right now, because now, you know, as I tell all the kids now, you know, as you move from as you move up and up and up, your responsibilities increase and increase and increase. And as your responsibilities increase and increase and increase, stress level increases. So you really need to figure out a way to handle stress. And the best way for them to figure out how to do that is for you to model it. You know? And the worst way you can model that is if you know, when you deal with stress, is when you have that little drink. You know, it just sends a real bad message to them. It really does. You know, because they're not so much listening to what you have to say in many cases as they're looking at. I mean, they're listening to what you say. But what they're really taking a look at is what you do. You know? In fact, let me just show you something for a minute, then I'm going to open it up. You just take it, whatever you have in your hands, just put it down for a minute. You know? And just do me a favor, you know, just put your hand on your chin. All right? Now, some people might have put their hand here, and I said chin. Right? And as clearly as I stated that, and I'm sure for all of you who did put your hand on your chin, you were for a second confused. Am I right? You might have been like, you say chin, I don't understand, right? Now think about it. If you were confused there, notice what I said and what I did was inconsistent. So if your message is one thing and your behavior is different, it's inconsistent. And they're confused the exact same way. They're like, whoa. And you don't want to make it confused for them. Make it clear, make it consistent, so they can understand exactly what you say. So that what you say is consistent with what you do. Okay? So, yes?
What we try to encourage is that the drinking age is 21 for a reason, and that your brain doesn't fully develop until you're 19.
Yeah.
And that there's a reason for that. And as an adult, if we can control our drinking, we never drink a cocktail at night because we're older and we can handle it. So we try to make sure that, to explain to her that situation. But they don't, like you said, they still don't listen. You're right, the message is what you do.
Yeah. And so all we can do is just keep on driving the message home. You know, I was with some 8th graders today, and I said, you know, what I'm going to talk to you about today is the same thing I would talk to you about in the 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade. It'd be the exact same thing. The message remains the same. And all I can do is keep on telling you the exact same thing. It doesn't change. What I would have to tell you in the 11th grade is the same thing I would tell you in the 8th grade. I would just give you a slightly more grown-up version of it. But at the heart of it is the exact same. So all we can do is just keep on.
How do you prepare your kid to go to college if you know your kid's going to drink?
But how do you know? How do you know your child's going to drink?
My child, she's already tested the water. I mean, I just think, as much as I'll try not to, how do you get her ready to you can be really strict, don't give her the license, you do all the things you're trying to do, make her not go down that path. But if you think she is, how do you prepare them for college to deal with that? You kind of just do.
I mean, I mean, by the time that child is a senior, all the information, hopefully that they would need in preparation to go to college, hopefully has already been transferred over to them. At the point at which they get ready to go to college, they have them sit down and have a long discussion about what to do in college. There's some things we want to talk about, but you want to have already laid that groundwork out for them already. And one of the things I would suggest is that, and let them really understand this, and that is that if you believe your child is going to drink or does drink, you can warn them and let them know that kids would go to college who start to drink or have been drinking. There's a high probability that they'll have difficulty in college, mainly because when you go to college, there's nobody watching them anymore.
I've had people who have kids go to college and say, well, you've got to teach a girl to drink before she goes to college. And I don't believe in that, but I hear it sometimes. I'm like, really? And so if you don't, she's going to get in even more trouble because you're not going to know how to handle it.
Well, next time somebody, see, that's normative belief thinking.
Right?
That's normative belief. That's saying that are there kids in college who drink? Of course. The normative belief is that all kids who go to college drink. And one of the worst things I hear is this, and I really find this to be this really bugs me to no end. I have a child who's gone through all of their 4 years in high school, hasn't drank, and then I go and tell that child, oh, you need to learn how to drink because when you go to college, because you haven't been drinking, you're going to drink yourself out of college. So here I am, I've done all I can, I've weathered the storm for 4 years, and now you tell me I did that for nothing and that I'm going to blow it? Personally, I think the one who I'd be more concerned with is the one who's been drinking in high school, because that's the individual who, when they go to college, has no boundaries, has to report to nobody, and those are the ones who in the first half of the first semester, in the first half of their first year of college, they're the ones who find themselves either being thrown out or so far behind that they're in trouble. And I tell kids all the time, if you start to drink, one of the worst things that happen in college, if you start falling behind, trying to catch up gets really difficult. Last thing you want to do is find yourself falling behind. And you'll end up falling behind if you find yourself drinking, getting caught up in that whole, thing, And the bottom line, next time somebody says that, kids are going to drink, ask them, can you show me that study, please? Can you show me where that is? And they'll come up with nothing, because there's absolutely there's not a scintilla of proof that states that a child who hasn't been drinking, when they go to college, will drink themselves out of college. There's absolutely no proof to that at all. None.
What percentage of college kids drink? Do you have any idea?
I haven't got the solid numbers on that right now. There's about 30% who really drink really bad. Who drink, they're the ones who make TV, or the ones who make MTV Spring Break, which is another interesting slice of college, right? MTV Spring Break, everybody's jumping in a body of water, Trump. I tell kids one of the worst things you can do is when they have a commercial and there's like water and alcohol. It's really not a good combination. There's about 30% of those kids who do. I think there's something like 25 to maybe 30% who just don't. And then you got a good number of kids in the middle who are drinking, but not in a problematic kind of way. Kind of almost like social drinking, really not drinking to get drunk, not really causing problems, not ruining the community around the school. Some communities are having trouble behind these simple kids who drink so much they ruin the whole neighborhood surrounding the college. Those are about 30% of the kids do that. But 30%, that's a lot of kids. When you look at how many kids in college, and you take 30%, that's a lot of kids. And we hear about them all the time. So after a while, you start thinking all kids are drinking. Here's an interesting statistic. They talk about, got all these kids in college who are binge drinkers. The people who make up the greatest number of binge drinkers are adults who make in excess of $50,000 a year. Those are the most binge drinkers to be found. How about that? It's not the college kids. Yeah?
I have a question. On this form, in one of the first sections, the kid tells you about a close friend who tried marijuana. your response should not be, who is it? I want to talk about this another again. What do you say when your kid explains a social situation that is less than appealing? What's an appropriate response? To A, get the information you want, and B, guide them to use that information.
So the question would be, like, what would be a typical question that you're talking about?
So the kid says, oh yeah, I was at this party and I found out that so-and-so was doing marijuana in the bathroom.
Okay,
Wow.
okay, and
And oh, by the way, I made this up.
you know,
I made this up.
so I would ask the child, what do you think of that? What do you think? What do you think? What's the best way to handle a situation like that? You know, whenever kids ask me a question and they want me to know my opinion, before I even answer, I always say, what do you think? I want to know what they think. And when they tell you that, you say, why did you tell me that? Why did you bring that to my attention? Does that bother you? Let's talk about it then. You know, instead of rushing to all of these, now we're going to make all these like boundaries and all these restrictions. Let's talk about it. How do you feel about that? They may be saying it because it might be troubling to them. Maybe that they're just bothered by it. And if they bring it to your attention, that's a really good sign, because that's really a sign of trust. The fact that they would even talk to you about it is a sign of trust. You know, so the first thing I would say is, look, first, thanks for telling me that. I'm glad that you feel comfortable enough to even talk to me about it. You know, because communication is probably the number one drug prevention thing that you can do. That's how come we got those sheets out for you. Communication is huge, you know. So I would just ask them, well, what do you think about that? How do you feel about that? Does that bother you? And if it bothers you, why does it bother you the way it does? You know, and they come up with some answers, you know, that are really on point. Affirm them. Say that's a really good answer. That's a healthy answer. That is a really good answer, because that's the truth. And if they come up with something that's totally misplaced and misinformed, you might want to correct them on that. You know, so there's a real problem with that. You know, and if they, you know, if they talk about, well, you know, I don't know, you know, it looks like it's okay for that child, or it's not that big a deal. I always tell kids all the time, I say, you don't know the total picture. Kids will always present to you that they're okay and they got it together. You don't know the total picture. You know, that's one of the things we talked about the other day when we talk about helping a friend. So a lot of times there's a lot of people who are troubled by an individual who's using drugs or alcohol, and the people who are troubled by it, you may not know them. And all you know is that kid who presents to you this persona of I got it together. You know, there's a lot of treatment. So you can even tell them, say, even if that child looks like they're really cool, really popular, really cute, big time jock, real smart, doesn't matter. You don't know the whole picture. There's any number of things that could be happening behind that person using this substance. Yeah.
I just want to say that what you pointed out about parents and allowing things to go on in their house, it really is true. I have a child who's in college, and throughout her high school career, I was more disappointed oftentimes in parents making bad decisions than in kids making bad decisions. And there are definitely people out there who make alcohol accessible in their homes, and even when they are home, have kids drinking in their house. And I just think it's really dangerous. And you know, the kids know whose house they can go to.
They do.
And you know, my husband and I, we have our alcohol locked up
Good.
because and it's not so much that I don't trust my kids, but I don't trust their friends.
There you
And
go.
sometimes they have friends in my home that I don't really know.
There you go.
And I don't want to be responsible for anything that would happen in my house. But it's just, I just found it absolutely unbelievable what parents allow to go on
It really is.
in their house.
And just like the kids know, you know, where those houses are, you need to know that. You You know, really, you need to have your own network of getting information from one another, just like kids, because kids do all their plotting and planning. You know, they network with one another, and they know what to do. They know the party line. They know how to say it. They know. They figure it all out. These kids are really smart. You know, and so you need to get that same kind of information. And I want to answer your question in a second, but I want to tell you also, you made a good point about, though you may trust your child, you kind of secure your alcohol to prevent what some kids may come in. And you need to do that also with prescription drugs. Because if I had to talk about a substance other than alcohol and marijuana that would be problematic, that would be prescription drugs. And if you got prescription drugs, what you need to do is you need to secure them, and you also need to really question whether you need to even keep them if you no longer have pain or any kind of discomfort. If you have any Vicodin, Oxycontin, or Percocet or something like that in the house, and there's no more pain to be had, the question is, why do I have this anyway? And when you get rid of it, you want to get rid of it in a way where it can't be recovered. You know, and you also want to do that at the grandparents' house. Unfortunately, grandparents, you know, they're being prescribed who knows how many, because we're a pharmaceutical-driven society. So you know, it's all kind of like drugs and stuff like that in the house. You want to secure those there also. Yeah?
If you have a child who wants to go to a party or a bonfire, and you've heard drugs or alcohol was involved there, and your child still wants to go, and you know their argument is, trust me, I've never done anything, blah 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 blah. Do you trust him, or do you not let him go?
That's your call. It's really hard to say. It's really hard to say, but I'll tell you one thing. It's better to be a parent than a friend. At a time like that, they want to go. If you genuinely feel this is not a safe place, you can't go. I feel too uncomfortable with this. I'd rather you not go. You know, if there's someplace else, if you want to hang out with some other friends or something like that, you know, but it's hard for me to answer that. Because there's some kids who are just really, you know, you just feel they've demonstrated their ability to handle awkward situations well. You know, I would not, you know, I would have a little difficulty having my kid go to a situation like that. Why even set up the temptation? You know, but at a time like that, you know, if you feel that it's a situation that bothers you, can't go. And explain why. Explain why. This is not just a no, you can't go and just leave it at that. Explain why. So this is why I feel that way. You know, I'm really uncomfortable with that. I really, you wouldn't go. If there's something else you want to go, some other friend's house you want to go to, you're more than happy to go. You know, but this situation troubles me too much. I'd rather you not go.
Are there any statistic as to like how many kids would go to a party and see drugs or alcohol and be able to say no?
And be able to.
And be able to walk away and call their parent, or be
I
able
really,
to say no.
I doubt if there's any statistics about that, you know, but one of the things you want to do is you want to talk about how, you know, because sometimes kids will end up going to a party where neither you nor they know drugs or alcohol are going to be there. It turns out that it's there. And what you want to do, I tell kids all the time, is you want to plan for what happens. I talk about having what I call what-if conversations. So what if you go to that party and then all of a sudden, that's what's going on? Or what if all of a sudden the person who drives you to the party is now drinking? Now what do you do? So you want to have a whole, and you want to provide for them an exit strategy. You know, I talk about having a safe word where they could call up and say something. Make yourself the bad person. Make yourself like the ogre. You're like, oh, my mom, you know, she's so, you know, I can't do anything without her. She's coming to pick me up. And you come, and you don't care. They're safe. They get out of there. So what you want to do is provide an exit strategy for them. I tell kids all the time, when you leave, make sure you tell your folks exactly where you live. Even give them the cross street so it's easy for you to get there. Make sure you have a cell phone that's fully charged. Make sure if in the event that they can't get through to you, that they have a car service that could get them home. Make sure you have money when you leave. Go with friends who also are not going to drink or use drugs, so you have some support in a situation like that. And I tell them all the time, in a worst case scenario, call the police. If you really feel unsafe, call the police. You know, they say, oh, George, would you do that? I say, yeah. If you feel that uncomfortable and you have no other option, call the police. So they'll come and get you.
I think a strategy that we've used, that we're using with our daughter, whatever she's going to get caught or lying or drinking or drugs, she's not going to get her license. We'll determine how long that's going to be. You know, whether it's a month, 2 months, 6 months, a year. It's up to her. We put it back on her that if she can't be responsible, that she's not going to be responsible enough to drive. And I think that has really made her think about things. She was going to go to a party the other weekend. So if they're drinking there and they get caught, or the police are called, you're all busted. It doesn't, you know, the whole place gets shut down.
Right.
And then we have to come get you. So if you know that they're going to be drinking and you want to go and you know nothing good's going to come out of it, then why are you taking that risk? You're taking the risk of not getting your license. And she made the choice not to go to that party after that lengthy discussion with her because she's already had 1 month taken away from getting her driver's license, so she knows how serious we are about it, and that is really making her think.
There you go.
And unfortunately, we had to do something that was going to really affect her to make her start thinking, that's not right, you can't do that stuff. I don't know. I mean, every kid's different,
Every
too.
kid is different.
Every kid
Yeah,
is different.
Exactly.
Every kid's different.
You know, and the best way you know your child is not only by, you know, you looking at them and how they behave and stuff like that, but maybe in communication with them, talking to them, asking them, what's going on, how you feeling, how things are, you know? And if you see something strange, you don't have to jump to the conclusion that they're using drugs, because the unfortunate thing about a child maturing in drug use is that it manifests itself the same way. Because kids who are absolutely not using drugs can look like they're using drugs, or they act like they're using drugs, but they're not using any drugs. They're just being teenagers. You know, they just look drug-induced, but they're just being kids. Unfortunately, like, you look at them, it's like, what is wrong with that child? You know, I mean, you probably said that any number of times in your lifetime. What is wrong with that child? You know, and they're looking at you like, I'm okay. And they really are. You know, they just act crazy. You know, but if you see a child and they're doing something that's really disturbing, you know, you got to say something to something, but say, are you okay? You know, sometimes that signals to them that you know something's wrong. You know, you don't have to make a big deal of it. Are you okay? You know, you don't dress the way you normally did. And, you know, I don't see you with Susie or Fred or any. What's up with that? What's going on? You know, how come you don't hang out anymore? You know, you always used to like listening to your music or playing your instrument, and I'll never see you lift it up and pick it up anymore. What's going on? Why is that? You know, don't make it a leading thing like you're trying to say to them, I think you're using drugs. Just ask them, why? What's going on? You know, and if it persists and you get that gnawing feeling, then you want to step it up. I would call school. So I was a little concerned about my child. Can you tell me, have you noticed anything? You know, because good thing about a school like this is that they know their kids. When I walk down the hall, Sam seems like she knows everybody in the building. You know, first names, hi it is, hi there. She knows everybody. You know, so the bottom line is they stay on top of the kids here. You know, so we have a lot of eyes on kids. You know, she may be able to turn around and say, well, you know, we've been a little concerned about Linda. What we're seeing. You may have the beginning of something you want to pursue at that point, possibly. You know? And the other thing too is make yourself available for a phone call from another parent. Sometimes parents don't want to receive. Sometimes parents are like. Sometimes parents have information but don't want to share because they think another parent will curse them out. Because there's instances where that's happened. Like, don't you tell my George is so and so, and so George is. The bottom line, this is George. But it's like, don't you talk about my George, he's all this and everything, and like, all you want to do is say, you know, I think your child's drinking and stuff, you know? And it's not that you got to believe everything that parent says, but make yourself available to that phone call, because that could be a source of information for you right there. Yeah.
You talk about having a network of parents, which I'm totally for, where we communicate and all of that, but what about when you get information from your child as a result of long discussions in confidence, and you're really trying to cultivate that confidence with your child, that your child can say things? What do you do with that information that you get? You're feeling constrained to talk to others.
So your child shares with you something
You can't tell.
like a child who's doing something.
Whatever's going on socially that might be helpful to other parents.
I don't know, in a situation like that.
Send them to me.
Call us.
Yeah. I mean, you can always say, you can go tell Mrs. Straub this story, and she will keep your name out of it, and she'll check in on your friend.
But what I found out, because I've been in a lot of kind of that situation in the past few years, is that sometimes the kids are lying to you because they want you to think that they're the good person. So you can't always believe what your child is saying. So and then if you do call the parent, talk to the parent, their kid's telling them like the same thing.
Another thing
And so if you don't communicate, it's like, if you don't communicate, you will never find out what the real truth is. And the only way I have actually found out truth about things, and it's been weeks later, is by eventually talking to the parent and us getting together and saying, okay, we're going to talk about it, and they'll tell us what their kids say, and I'll say, and it's completely different, and then we find out what the real story is, but we try not to let our kids know so that they do. But I think it's very, very important to communicate with parents. I mean, I put my foot down that if I can't communicate with a parent that you want to hang out with, you're not going to hang out with that person, because it's the only way I know that she's not lying to me and that she's being safe and that she's, doing the good things at someone else's house. I mean, otherwise.
When a kid comes to me and says, I'm really concerned about so-and-so, but I don't want you to do anything about it because they'll know that it's from me, and that's kind of what you're talking about, I say, well, you must be really concerned. I wouldn't be involved in the conversation if you thought this was a problem your friend could handle on her own or you could handle on your own. So this is a big deal and it's too big for you. So who's the next step? And I don't say, so may I tell someone? I say, who am I to tell next? And because I'm an adult and you're all adults and you just have to take the reins from them. That's it's uncomfortable and they don't like it, but they live to tell the tale at the other end of the end of the story. So that's how I handle it anyway.
It's tough. That's a tough one.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Along the same line of the balance between building a relationship of confidence and trust with your child that will tell you things, and then also as a parent who's intervening, what's your position on a parent who might have a suspicion, a worry, a gut feeling that something's off with their child, and their child they've asked and they've done all the right things, and their child's assuring them everything's fine? What would a next step be there?
I would move it up. If after I've already gone through how are you, is everything okay, and you still have that knowing feeling, call the school, get some information, and that for me the next thing would be to call the school, find out what the school know, see if they're seeing what I'm seeing, and the school at that point might be in a good position, maybe suggest maybe what you might want to do at that point. And if the bottom line, worst comes worse, if you really feel that child needs to be seen by a professional, I would have them seen by a professional. If you feel comfortable enough, have them be seen by a professional.
What about parents who are, they know there's a diary there and they don't feel like they should be reading it, but they're driven to, or they want to search their kid's room to see if there's anything in there. What are your positions on that?
Well, the bottom line is that's your house. That's your, don't get me with this one. My thing is like, this is my house. When you're giving 50% of the mortgage payment on this place, when you cover the utility bills, when you go do the food shopping, then maybe you have some say-so. Until such time, I say so. This is not a democracy.
That's the same thing with the phone.
Yeah,
It's on the phone. We pay for it, we can see whatever we want.
that's right. I bought that computer. Yeah, I want to know what's on Facebook, everything, yeah.
So I have a friend who had a child who was pushing the boundaries, shall we say. And one day when the kid was at school and they found out yet another thing, they took off her door. And they took everything out of her room except, like 2 pairs of jeans, or just the basic essentials, and she had to earn everything back. And I thought taking off the door was so beautiful. Because privacy is a right, is not a right, you earn it. And the respect that you give and get, you earn it. And it really taught this kid a great lesson. And she's a great kid, she's 22 now and doing beautifully. But she lost her door at 15 or 16. And I thought it was great. Fortunately, we haven't had to take any doors down in my house, but I'm holding on to that one.
Doorknob works too.
Yeah.
Can't lock it.
And you always gotta watch that "Don't you trust me" one.
And they keep doing it,
Yeah.
It's like, don't think that they're sorry the first time and they're gonna be an angel. Or at least I've witnessed this. They just go right back to, it's like you just gotta keep pulling them out of that fire. If you have that kind of kid, and you wanna trust them, you wanna believe them, but they're just not, sometimes you just can't. Don't let them fool you.
Don't.
I've been fooled a lot over the past few years, and I'm just like, it's unfortunate, but that's the only way to get out of trouble.
That's the only way to get out of trouble. You gotta have. And
It's our job.
some kids you can have on the leash, and some kids they gotta be like right here. It's like no leash for you. Well, you have not proven to me your ability to be trusted at all. Yeah.
This is just a comment that we are on our 3rd sophomore, we have older kids, and our pediatrician, Dr. Hathaway, said, do not ever be afraid to be the parent to call when your child wants to go to a party or bonfire and ask the parent what their policy is about alcohol. And, or if your kid wants to spend the night with somebody, if they have guns or whatever, and she said, never be afraid. And I think a lot of times as parents, you're kind of worried what other parents will think, or whatever, and I think it was just a good tip.
Yeah. And you got some kids thrive on the fact that you won't make that phone call. They're really glad you're not going to make that phone call. They make something, how are you going to say that? That's so embarrassing. How can you do that to me? Well, I'm going to do it.
Well, our kids are to the point they'll say, call the mother, or call the dad, because they know they're not going to get a go.
They're not, right.
For the most part, if we don't check and find out.
Yeah, I think that's really good suggestion. Yeah, make that phone call. Yeah.
Also, when your kids, once our kids are all freshmen, sophomores, probably don't have their driver's license yet. But once they get their driver's license, the whole game changes. And so what we did a lot with parents is that we would call and say, okay, did she tell you that this is what they're doing and they're sleeping at your house? And just kind of verify and make sure that all the stories match. And that way you can find out too. Until they're coming to your house, is that right? And we kind of just all call each other. It was just, I didn't always tell my daughter that I was calling for parents' friends. I just didn't.
The other thing is along with knowing what's going to happen at a party that they're going to have, if you're going to have a party at your house, you really need to think that through clearly. How many kids are allowed to come? What's going to be the guideline? What are going to be the restrictions? When's the start time? When's the end time? No in and out, no packages. Make your constant trips. You don't need to be right there in the middle of the dance floor watching everything, but just don't put a lot of chips in the bowl so you have to constantly refill it. That's good, you know what I'm saying? Create a reason for you to be there, And if you see a child who comes in and they don't look, you don't like the way they look, definitely don't send them home. Or say, you can't, I'm not going to send you home, but I'm calling your parents, and you can't get the parents if necessary. So if the child came here, do whatever's necessary to get that child home safely. The worst thing you want to do is send them on their own, because that'd be the last thing you want done with your child. Your child was in any way impaired. you want to do is say, kid, come in, you're not allowed in, you know. But you really need to think through when you're going to have a party and make it really clear. Let that word go out. You know, if you're not invited, you're not in. I don't want a whole bunch of stranger people I don't know showing up. You know, because that's a lot of times, you know, that's when the beginning of things going awry. You know, you have all these kids showing, you don't know who they are. You know, you need to make it clear how many kids are going to come, the beginning time, the ending time. Think it through. You know, don't put yourself in a situation where you're facing some kind of civil or legal charges. Because all of a sudden you got kids drunk in the house or impaired. Things like that happens.
I don't want to cut it short, but we're at 8:15. We're about 15 minutes over, and I know everyone's got a family at home to go home to. So if there's any last questions, otherwise I think we maybe.
You know, this information that we have on the sheet, the one that has that FCD, you know it's on the last sheet. It has our telephone number and our website. You know, you go to a website, there's a ton of information on the website. To call us if necessary. When we talk about if your things are going a little crazy, you don't know, you know. One of the things you can call our office and we'll try to give you some guidance. You know, there's another option that you have there along with all of the information, all of which are reproducible. You go on the site, download all the information. So if you do that, you're more than happy to make use of it. I encourage you to do that. All right? Thank you very much.
Thank you.